there is power when we organize. Power when we stand and fight together, there is power when we organize.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting weekend. What an interesting weekend it was. We now find out the trucker freedom rally from Canada, the attempt to recreate it here with all kind of grievances, all kind of anger, mostly right-wing talking points funded by right-wing money. But hey, why not? The People's Convoy, as they are calling it, going to kick off, I guess, on the 22nd, somewhere in California. They're saying at the Adelanto Stadium. That is going to go all the way across the USA until it gets, well, to Washington, D.C., some 2,600 miles. And all along the way, they're going to be jamming up cities on the way. And good. You know what? I'm happy they're taking the southern route. You know, jam up those cities in New Mexico and in Texas and Oklahoma. Go that route and jam everything up. Because there's nothing people love more than traffic congestion. There's nothing that people love more than way too many trucks on the road. That should get the American people all fired up and happy. Look, you know, the right wing views this as a moment. They view this as a moment to take advantage of what they think happened in Canada. Again, they've told themselves that what happened in Canada was you know, the entire country had enough. When you talk to the people who actually live in Canada, it's a small fraction, and that small fraction has always been, well, the friction part. They've always been the ones on the fringe. They've always been out there. This just gave them a rallying cry, and a lot of money and a lot of organizing power from the U.S. came in to help. This seems to be the line that I'm getting from people who live there, that this wasn't truly a homegrown, kind of like we're trying to recreate here. Now, look, there's enough crazy people in this country, especially in the trucking industry where I've spent more than 30 years. There's enough anger out there for any reason. And, you know, what I find interesting here is the mandates. You know, there are all these onerous mandates that evidently people, okay. Why are you having the big convoy? Oh, yeah, mandates. Yeah, the vaccine mandates. You know, the mandates that don't exist. The federal mask mandates, you know, that don't exist. I don't know where you live, but in my neighborhood, handfuls of people are wearing masks. That's purely by choice because they don't want to get the virus. I am now finding people who are getting it more and more. And look, it's because we've now got it in our head, hey, it's Omicron's not a big deal. People aren't dying. We'll get through it. Well, I'll tell you, my entire family, what's left of my family, they all have it, and they are all struggling. Now, you know, my thoughts are with them. I'm hoping they get to the other side. But they ain't happy. This isn't the flu. This isn't the sniffles and a cold. This is something that's wiped them out. And as I said, I'm with them. I mean, I want them to pull through. I want them to get to the other side and be able to go, yeah, it was not a big deal, even though it took 2 weeks to get through it. But here, the big trucker rally, they're gonna start honking their horns, honking for freedom. I guess that's coming, and it's a cornucopia of conservative crazy. All of these now made up groups: the Unity Project, American Project, advocates for civil rights, U.S. Freedom Flyers, the American Foundation for Civil Liberties and Freedom. And, of course, you're going to have all your crazy religious groups who are going to throw into that. It's going to be great. It's going to be fabulous. It's going to kick off, on the, I guess it's, I keep getting conflicting reports. First, it was the 22nd, and then I'm seeing that to be it. And then I've seen the 23rd. I guess, is there the 22nd? There's going to be a big shindig. I'm thinking that's how it's kind of going to work, where they're going to do their speaking and maybe start dripping out. But also, they're going to head out towards Arizona on Wednesday, I guess. Thursday, they'll be in Arizona, I guess, still, which I don't know why you're taking so long. Then into Texas on Friday. So we'll have fun watching the convoy, and then we'll get to hear the reports of how there's 100 million trucks. Gate to gate, man. There's 100 million of them, and everyone's on, clogged up every artery, and they're all honking, and it's all, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. I can't wait to hear right wing, the blather machine go on. But what I find interesting is these groups are in it, and they're making a lot of money off of this, because this is what the right wing infrastructure was built for. This is what taking over talk radio was built for. This is what Fox News and OAN and Newsmax and all of the cable news dominance that the right-wing money machine has to push this kind of divide and conquer. This is that moment. Which side are you on? This is that moment of I can easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. And as I was looking through some of the groups, I came across one that it's the Great American Patriot Party. Because who could be against the Great American Patriot Party? They are now funding the American Trucker Freedom Fund, which means you give them money and they give it to the other thing. And they're supporting the American Trucker Freedom Convoy, which I'm not sure if it's the same as the People's Convoy or if this is going to be a different one. They haven't given me any information. I have gone through and tried to sign up. Their code of conduct, though, kind of stopped me. I'm reading through the code of conduct, and this is great for anyone who spent any time watching the videos from the Freedom Rally in Canada, with the kind of things that they were saying and some of the stuff that went on. I got a kick out of the fact that in their code of conduct they will not tolerate any harassment of convoy participants in any form, none. Now, I'm wondering if this is the participants, if they can be as harassing, as intimidating, and homophobic, and misogynistic, and all that as they want to be, and it's other people can't be. I'm not really sure. Language a little vague, but they say that they're hell bent on providing a harassment-free convoy experience for everyone, regardless of gender identity, and expression, age, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, race, ethnicity, or religion. And the first thing that came to mind, evidently these people don't know truck drivers. Evidently there's not a truck driver in the bunch. Because, well, that, if you listen to the CB, that's basically it. Now they say harassment includes offensive verbal comments related to gender, age, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, race, ethnicity, religion. They also go into deliberate intimidation, stalking, following, harassing, photographing, recording, sustained disruption of talks or other events, and inappropriate physical contact. That's all one sentence. That could have been broken up better. So maybe a truck driver wrote that. I'm not sure. But you go into all this stuff, and if anyone's ever listened to the CB or participated there on Channel 19, that's basically all you hear. Everything written there, that's what you hear. So I doubt this was actually done by a truck driver, but hey, you never know. And the thing that gets me is I look at this American Trucker Freedom Fund. What a beautiful website. It really is. You should take a look at it. It's beautiful. Lots of America. Beautiful pictures of trucks, beautiful pictures of the flag and the Constitution. And oh, it's a gorgeous site. Red, white, and blue. Mom, apple pie, God, country, Jesus, guns, babies, all of that stuff. It's all right there. And the weird thing about it is you look at it and you can see this is a DC construct. Someone in DC did this. And yes, the Great American Patriot Party, that's where they're located. So not surprising. But you look at this and you go, on some level, is it not frightening how easy it is to make something look so official? Like, hey, there's something really going on here. This is, the truckers are coming together. They're going to come together and they're going to fight for, on their website, pipeline. Evidently, the truck drivers want a pipeline. Not sure what that has to do with the mask mandates or the vaccines, but hey, don't worry about facts. They want energy independence. Again, not sure what it has to do with the mask and the mandates, but they're against big tech censoring them, even though big tech is how they got their website to me. Just kind of throwing that out there. They're against agricultural regulations, and they hate big pharma. And you go, okay, I'm still not sure how that has to do with the vaccine mandates, but all right, you got your thing. So I went on Twitter to find the Great American Trucker Freedom Fund, and one of the tweets that they put out was they were looking for truckers. They're going, hey, are there any actual trucker drivers out there who might want to talk to the media? And you go, but hold on. I thought you were the Truckers Fund. I thought you were it. And the reality is it's not. This is all show and tell. This is all a game. This is political theater. And this is what the right has understood masterfully for decades, and the left never got. The left wants to be purist. They want, you have to hold to your line or you're going to get canceled. The right understands political theater. They understand how to entertain and enrage and keep people enraged in a direction, well, at the left. Democrats. Everything's Joe Biden's fault. Everything's Democrats' fault. And you ask them, they'll tell you. For instance, I ran into an old guy the other day in a parking lot. Happened to stop at a store, decided, hey, I saw this guy pull in with this giant dually, this big Ford F-1650, the giant tires, fifth wheel in the back. I mean, this was a $100,000 truck if it was a dime. And there it was, this beautiful, incredible piece of almost art, if you will. An amazing bit of American muscle and ingenuity and manufacturing prowess. There it is, just this rolling monstrosity, adorned with Trump paraphernalia. It had everything. The giant F. Biden Trump 2024 flags hanging from the poles in the bed. There were two of them. They were back there, and across the windshield, like a foot. Like an entire foot across the top of the windshield, where the little blue area usually is. You had the big Trump 2024 sticker, right on the windshield. Just massive, everything, stickers all over it. You name it, he had the sticker. This guy not only bought the hat and the T-shirt, he got the flags, the stickers. He got everything. He got the jumbo pack. I'm sure that, they've tapped into his retirement fund to be able to get to this. And I, being curious, because he parked, a couple of spots from where I parked, I had to ask. So I said, hey, man, I'm just curious. And I go, why? Why the mobile shrine? I'm curious. I don't want to get into politics. I'm just curious. I don't want to get into an argument. I'm curious what the thought is. What is it that got you to purchase all of this stuff? What is it that got you to purchase all of this stuff and then to slap it on this $100,000 plus vehicle? What got you to buy the stuff made in China, mind you? Because the flags were made in China. Yes, they were. What got you to do this? What is it that made you wake up one day and go, you know what? I'm gonna make a statement. What is it that did that? And the thing is, in the 10 minutes that I stood there and talked to him, and look, once he realized that I wasn't attacking him, I was just curious. I said, look, I don't have a dog in the fight. And this is, I kind of lied. I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just curious why someone would do this. Because this is politically new. This kind of stuff I've never seen before. The Trump phenomenon has been all about in-your-face extremism, and I'm just curious what made you, finally, get to this point. And in the 10 minutes that I talked with him, all I got was, your basic, right-wing talk radio talking points. Freedom and liberty and, returning the nation to its rightful glory and, all kinds of platitudes and no substance. And I said, look, I don't want to argue about, anything. I'm just curious what it was that made you think like this, that made you go, hey, I want to do this. And I'd asked, I said, have you ever done this for a candidate before? I go, because look, I've never put a candidate's bumper sticker on my vehicle. Never done it. I don't put stickers on my cars. I don't know why. It's just something it seems like energy wasted. And I know I'm supposed to. I know we're all supposed to, do that, but I don't. And I'm curious why people would go, not just from a simple sticker, which a lot of people do, and that's great, but to just obnoxious, just a rolling bit of just obnoxious, in-your-face obscenity. And the obscenity right there. And he went in, as we were talking, he said, look, he was a pro-union guy. He's retired. He's in his 70s. He's a pro-union guy. He was a Democrat his whole life. And went into how the Republicans are no different than the Democrats, how this whole Trump movement was about burning everything down and going back to freedom. And I just kind of again I keep asking questions because I'm interested in what the guy's got to say, because this guy is, you can see as he's talking, he's viscerally angry at something. And again, I go back to this. Did you ever do this for another candidate? I mean, you go back to Reagan. Did you do it for Nixon? Did you do it for Ford? Did you do it for Carter? Did you do it for Reagan? Were you a Reagan Democrat? No, he got through the Reagan years while still voting for a Democrat. Did you do it for Clinton? No, hated him. Did you do it for George W. Bush? No, of course not. Did you do it for oh yeah, there we go. That guy. Seems that guy, the 44, kind of got him interested in politics. And I didn't make a bit out of it that, now I feel that it really is all about race. That's what it seems about, because this guy looks like he's doing really well. He has been a winner in our economy. I'm sure he's got Social Security. He's got to be doing well. Got a $100,000 truck he's rolling around in. Probably had $300 or $400 worth of Trump paraphernalia flying or stuck or hanging from his $100,000 vehicle. He's got to be doing at least okay, right? And the only thing when I walked away, the only thing I could come up with is it's about race. It's about what's been fed to him, because it's not where he lives. It then comes back to, the talking points that he kept spewing. The fact that this guy's mind was infected with right-wing blather. All of the grievances that you hear daily and that you're inundated with daily is what this guy was concerned about. believed, honestly believed our cities are burning. Honestly believed that, the borders are being overrun by Al Qaeda. His pronunciation. And that, we got to take the country back in the right direction. And, when we started talking about, just other things, it really it stuck with me that no one's ever reached out to this guy and tried to present a different side. And I hope he's listening tonight, because I did say, hey, I appreciate your time. Thank you. I'm gonna use our conversation in my opening, because I think it's important. I think there's an opportunity to reach people, because I do believe that had I spent another 10 minutes with him, maybe we could have talked about some issues that we would have agreed on. But in that moment, my mind was, what would make you do that? What would make you want to do that to this vehicle? And why now? Why that guy, a billionaire who's never cared about the working class in his life, but has started talking about it. And this is where I've been saying for years, all the years I've been doing this show, Democrats have got to go back to their roots in talking to working class voters, especially in rural areas. Got to talk about how you're going to make their lives better, how we're going to bring jobs back, how we're no longer going to be the party of neoliberalism and an open border free trade, how we're going to actually create jobs. And I think Joe Biden is doing that. But it's got to be the entire party moving in that direction. And now finally you're seeing some strategists going, maybe we should talk to the working class. Maybe we can bring the country somewhat back together by talking to the working class. Understand the reason the right wing spends so much money on social media, on radio, on television. Why do you think they spend billions and billions of dollars creating cable news programs and funding talk radio? And look, today, social truth or Truth Social, that's it. Donald Trump's Truth Social is evidently now available in Apple stores. It's the official launch of Truth Social. Now, granted, last week when I downloaded it was terrible. Buggy, the same 5 people posting the same idiotic nonsense. And for $30, $28.99, I can get a blue check so that we can get rid of that grievance that Twitter doesn't give me a blue check. Why do they do that? Because they understand talking to people. And if they can get their people and bring more people, they're going to control the narrative. The left has never done this. They've never built the infrastructure. You don't see any left-leaning people going, you know what, we should have left Twitter, or we should have left Facebook. The right's doing it. The grievance machine, they are actually doing it. And look, I think it's going to be a disaster. I think it's going to flop because it's going to be poorly run. But those people will stay and they will pay because they're loyal to what's being sold to them, because they believe, like this guy did, they believe that even as a billionaire, even as somebody who is out there as Trump has been, that they care about the working class. So for me, the message for Democrats, you better wake up to the reality that the working class is listening, and you better have something to say. That's simple for me. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Michael Sainato is going to be here from The Guardian to share some thoughts on his most recent piece on inflation and, wow, the skyrocketing rents. And I got some reasons why I think they're going up as well. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1846. That was the day Sarah Bagley became the first female telegraph operator. She was hired at the office in Lowell, Massachusetts. Sarah spent weeks studying the electrical theory behind the new technology and began her job in earnest. She soon quit in protest after learning her pay was far less than her male counterparts. Bagley was no stranger to labor struggles. She was among the many Lowell textile workers who struck in 1842. Bagley was one of the founders of the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association. She fought for the 10-hour day and better working conditions in the mills. Sarah also helped to found the labor paper, The Voice of Industry. When the Reform Association demanded state investigations into working conditions at the mills, Bagley stated, quote, "Is anyone such a fool to suppose that out of 6,000 girls in Lowell, 60 would be there if they could help it? Whenever I raise the point that it is immoral to shut us up in a room 12 hours a day, I am told that we have come to the mills voluntarily, and we can leave when we will. Voluntarily," she said. "The whip which brings us to Lowell is necessity. We must have money. A father's debts are to be paid, an aged mother to be supported, a brother's ambition to be aided, and so the factories are supplied. Is this to act from free will? Is this freedom? To my mind, it's slavery." Bagley returned to Lowell's Hamilton Mills after quitting the telegraph office. She briefly continued her activism until she married and moved to Brooklyn, New York. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Many Americans can't believe that political coups are part of our country's history. But consider the Wall Street Pooch of 1933. Never heard of it? It was a corporate conspiracy to oust Franklin Roosevelt, who had just been elected president. With the Great Depression raging and millions of families financially devastated, FDR had launched several economic recovery programs to help people get back on their feet. To pay for this crucial effort, he had the audacity to raise taxes on the wealthy, and this enraged a group of Wall Street multimillionaires. Wailing that their, quote, liberty to grab as much wealth as possible was being shackled, they accused the president of mounting a class war. To pull off their coup, they plotted to enlist a private military force made up of destitute World War I veterans who were upset at not receiving promised federal bonus payments. One of the multimillionaire's lackeys reached out to a well-respected advocate for veterans, retired Marine General Smedley Darlington Butler. They wanted him to lead 500,000 veterans in a march on Washington to force FDR from the White House. But they chose the wrong general. Butler was a patriot and lifelong soldier for democracy who in his later years was critical of corporate war profiteering, and he was repulsed by the hubris and treachery of these Wall Street aristocrats. He reached out to a reporter, and together they gathered proof to take to Congress. A special congressional committee investigated and found Butler's story, quote, alarmingly true, leading to public hearings with Smedley Darlington Butler giving detailed testimony. This is Jim Hightower saying, by exposing the traitors, this courageous patriot nipped their coup d'etat in the bud. But their sense of entitlement reveals that we must beware of the concentrated wealth of the imperious rich, for it poses an ever-present danger to your and my majority rule.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So over the weekend, I was, my kids got me hooked on these Instagram videos. And some of them are TikTok, some of them are a bunch of stuff. So I've been flipping through these videos and watching all of these rich people talking about, hey, you could be a millionaire, and how to be a millionaire and all the things that it could take. And I happened to come across one with the Yankees player, Alex Rodriguez. And he was talking to another rich guy about where they invest their money. And it, almost like it was planned in unison. The guy goes, so Alex, where do you invest your money? And they both said in unison, red states. And the reason that red states was the answer is because, well, as Alex pointed out, less regulations, less snoopy people looking into your business, and more opportunity. And I would argue because of that, and what he said that he does, him and his investment group, They are buying up as many properties as they can, and the number that he threw out there was anywhere between 100,000 per door up to 150,000 per door. You find out that this former baseball player and his buying group own over 38,000 units across red states. Now, again, he's just one in a huge number of these buying groups that have been doing this, and you wonder why the rents are skyrocketing. I got to think this buying up by Wall Street and these private equity firms has to do something, but no. My right-wing friends, my blathering friends on the radio on the other side of the aisle say, no, all Joe Biden. All Joe Biden. And here to share some thoughts on, well, what the problem is and why the problem is, I've asked Michael Sainato to come talk with us. Michael is a labor and economic justice reporter over at The Guardian. He's got a new piece out titled Renters Across U.S. Face Sharp Increases, Averaging Up to 40% in some cities. Michael, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on, Rick.
So 40%, that's insane. I mean, that's just completely insane. And my first question is why? How is this legal? How is this possible? And why?
Because there aren't rent control laws in place. Pretty much anywhere, just on local levels, in some places, but particularly in places like Florida, in cities like Texas or Georgia, which rents are skyrocketing the most in the country right now. There aren't those rent control. So basically, a landlord can increase the rent once the lease expires however they want. They can double it, they can triple it. And you see a lot of landlords are shocking renters when they get a lease renewal. Normally, maybe it's 5% around there for every 1 year, but now for no reason, there's nothing done to the apartment. There's nothing, no new amenities or anything. It's just, here's your new lease. If you want to stay here, you're gonna have to pay an extra $400 or $500 on top of your rent that was already fairly affordable. So half the country is paying a third of their income towards rent. Half of the renters. There was a report out today by CBS News. 500 cities across the U.S. The average home price is $1 million or more. It's just ridiculous how much rent is increasing around the U.S. and how unattainable buying a home is, especially for people my age and even younger coming up. We're in a completely different world and a completely different market than our parents. It's the world run by Wall Street and, like you said, real estate investors and the wealthy that are using real estate and concentrating their control over it to skyrocket prices and to produce income that they don't produce any labor for. It's just passive income, and it's real. Like you've seen it. Every self-help financial become a millionaire is just a scheme through real estate, doing it through real estate, and that comes at the backs of extracting wealth at the people who can't afford homes or don't have property and have no choice but to rent in markets and cities where they have to work in order to work based on their education or receive any sort of salary to make a living wage. And it's just a devastating consequences. I've spoken with a lot of renters that are just shocked and disappointed and having to move further out of their urban centers because they're getting priced out.
Yeah.
And that just cascades into different aspects of their lives.
And again, I look at this and you go, all of this is kind of predictable. We've saddled a generation with massive student loan debt so that they don't have the income to be able to buy. We've gotten away from government policy of building lower cost affordable housing. And then you've got these private equity funds that we've given so many tax breaks and so much money to that now they have all of this cash and they want that passive income that you hear about on these videos all the time, getting someone else to buy your home. And I can only think that we're in the process of recreating the old the old company towns of yesteryear, only doing it on a national scale and having it done by these private equity firms.
Yeah, absolutely. And the consequences are, we're living in smaller apartments that cost a lot more. It doesn't take a lot of money to build these places. They're poorly built. In a lot of cases, they're poorly maintained. Renters don't have very few rights or recourses for, when landlords wrongfully evict people, or when landlords don't want to do something. And even when landlords do break the law, police are, how many times have you seen videos of police forcefully evicting people, but you never see, it's unheard of that a police is doing the same thing with a bad landlord or a slumlord, or someone who is taking advantage of marginalized communities, or in markets where people don't have any other choice for housing.
Yeah, I had a friend who lives in Orlando, or lived in Orlando. He ended up moving back to Ohio, but his landlord came and said, here's the new lease, and his rent doubled. It was 100% increase over the year that he had before. And he's like, I could barely pay what I was paying you before. Where do you think double is coming? And this is where, at some point, doesn't this have to break to where people are just going, I don't have the money, and these places stay vacant? I mean, I keep hearing my friends on the right talk about the invisible hand and the free market and all of this stuff, but housing is one of those things that you got to have. There's no ability to walk away and go, nope, screw it, I'm going to be homeless. I'll take the kids and we'll live under a bridge. That's not an option. So the free market argument isn't one there. But at some point, the ability to pay, doesn't that have to, play into this, where nobody has the money, so nobody rents these places?
It's getting to the point, where I think evictions are going to be more common, or a lot of these the housing that's even available is just going to go to wealthy people who can buy an extra apartment, or buy an extra house, and continue increasing the housing costs for everyone else, and displacing people where they're going to be more compact living. People are living with roommates, living with families. There's been all sorts of statistics that people under 30 are living with their parents for much longer, and that's because they can't afford to move out, and wages are remaining stagnant. The minimum wage hasn't budged federally. Even with the marginal wage gains we've seen, that's not keeping in pace with inflation. You're not getting 40% or 20% more of your income. That's just not happening. People aren't experiencing that. But the cost of living is increasing, so that rent burden is going to become more and more. People are going to have to take on more debt. One of the people I spoke with, they said they were one emergency away from getting evicted. So people are already scrounging to afford rent, and I think it's going to just become more of a bigger issue, and people are going to have to are going to either be forced to move out and have to commute longer, adding to transportation costs and things. It basically, the saying, it costs more to be poor. It's just going to cost more to compensate for all those different things.
Sadly, I think you're right. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Michael Sainato. He is a labor and economic justice reporter over at The Guardian. You can check out his work over at theguardian.com. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at his stuff. Now, in looking at this, and I think you hit on an interesting thing. Wages haven't gone up. Minimum wage hasn't gone up in, 12 years now. We're seeing a lot of labor strife, a lot of worker actions. As I said, we're seeing kind of the recreation of the company town, but also I think we're starting to see workers who said, we're being squeezed from every angle. Something's got to give. And it looks to me like, the coffee shops are the new coal mines. We're going to have coffee shop wars now, as we're 100 years ago, we had coal wars. Everywhere I look, there's a coffee shop about to go on strike. Starbucks now over 100 places are trying to organize. Starbucks is firing people again. This seems to be people going, hey, I can't afford my rent. I got to get it from my labor. And this is where this fight seems to be coming up next. What are you hearing?
I'm optimistic in that way, where I don't think anyone was expecting the Starbucks organizing when it started in Buffalo a few months ago to explode the way it has, and it's going to continue to grow. But like you said, Starbucks is aggressively opposing this, and unfortunately, the state of labor law is on their side. Where yesterday they fired one of the union organizers in Buffalo. And after they fired 7 workers all at once in Memphis for organizing a union, and of course Starbucks denied it, and I'm sure they have or they will deny that this firing yesterday of the Buffalo worker was connected to retaliation. But and unfortunately, it'll take months for the National Labor Relations Board to make a ruling on that, and it's not going to make that worker whole. And what the attempt is to try to stop the flood of organizing and scare workers from forming a union and other stores from getting to that point. The workers in Arizona, they voted in an election, and the NLRB impounded the ballots because Starbucks called for a review of which has been frivolous at this point. They did it in Buffalo, and the NLRB ruled that they had no merit in trying to argue that the workers couldn't unionize store to store. So they're paying Littler Mendelson thousands and millions of dollars to try all these different tactics, and younger people that are working in these Starbucks stores are standing up and saying are holding protests against these firings. I think it's just going to cascade more and more, and I'm anxious to see where it goes, and hopefully the General Counsel with the National Labor Relations Board actually takes some actions to instill penalties on Starbucks for their actions throughout this whole organizing effort.
Now, while I'm hopeful that like you, the NLRB actually does something, I like the fact that there's actually talk of going back to direct actions. There's a coffee shop in Detroit that's going on strike to win union recognition. I think we've got to go back to those days where the laws aren't helping workers. The laws aren't doing what they're supposed to do. We're not enforcing the laws, and they've been so badly perverted over the last 70 years that I think we have to go back to the kind of direct action that you're seeing the right try to do with these trucker rallies. Now, granted, I think the trucker rally people are crazy and all in it for the money and the grift. But there is some grassroots organizing going on because there's anger and there's discontent. I think workers have got to come to this mentality that, hey, we're getting screwed from every end. We got saddled with massive debt. Jobs aren't paying anything. Now they're throwing us out of our apartments. We've got no retirement security. There's no health care. All of this stuff at some point has to come to a head where the working class goes, screw it. We're not getting you your coffee. We're not cleaning up your mess. We're not doing this anymore until we get the dignity and respect we deserve.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a big question that the labor movement is trying to figure out and has to begin answering on. How do workers organize unions in the face of, right now the PRO Act is, there's no, clear path to getting that passed in the near future right now. What do we do in the meantime? And with all this, the sentiment of workers being dissatisfied and treated poorly throughout the pandemic, how do we tap into that energy and those sentiments and organize workers for real impactful change in unions and for concrete demands like wage increases, getting paid sick leave in this country finally. We still don't have health care for all in this country, even during a pandemic, and we're the only industrialized nation with these issues, and it's kind of ridiculous. And poll after poll shows these policies are popular, but how do we take that popular sentiments and fight back against wealthy and corporate interests lobbying to stop any sort of progress and win it.
Yeah.
And what's it going to take?
Yeah, no, I see. We've been trained like Pavlovian dogs to think of this in terms of right and left. It's the Democrats versus the Republicans, and then there's the, hey, they're all the same. When the reality is the fight, as it has always been, is top and down. It's up versus down. It's the wealthy versus the rest of us. It's corporate special interest versus the workers. It is capital versus labor at its essence, as it always has been. And what's happened in this country, like in every other time, you've got that old divide and conquer. The Jay Gould, I can pay half the working class to murder the other half. And this is what we see, right out in front of us.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a last question, because I want to go back to the rent thing real quick. Back during the Obama years, when we were throwing people out of their homes because they were being foreclosed on with all the robo-signing nonsense. And fortunately, Marcy Kaptur, the congresswoman from Ohio, said, hey, maybe you should make them show you the documents before they throw you out of the house. There was a movement of the Home Defenders League and people who were organizing around, when they came to evict you, pack the house full of people and stop the evictions. Is there any kind of movement that you see or things that you've heard that maybe this kind of thing can happen where people are going to go, no, I can't afford these rents and I can't afford to move. We're not moving.
Several months ago when the eviction moratorium ended, I did see some, I think, I don't remember the location exactly, but there were instances of tenant organizations and, renter advocacy groups doing that to prevent evictions. There are some good groups out there in New York City and LA and Kansas City has a really good one. But unfortunately, it's another thing. It's very difficult to organize people, in those ways. It's a scary thing for people to do. And that's just like one of the things that, organizers and community organizers need to really tap into and get around. Like, what do we do in response to these soaring rents and how people are being treated, and what is it doing to communities and cities and things like that. So I haven't seen anything start to kind of explode towards that, but with everything that's been going on in the pandemic, I wouldn't be surprised if in a few months we're at a point where we do start seeing that.
Yeah, at some point.
And I hope we do.
No, at some point it's got to happen. But Michael, I appreciate the time. Great work. Keep it up. I look forward to having you back again.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks so much, Michael Sainato. He is the labor and economic justice reporter over at The Guardian. We'll get links out on social media. I can check out the work that he does there. But the reality in this is pretty simple. And we've been talking about this for a while. This is going to come down to people finally saying, had enough already. Had enough. We're going to stand up, speak out. We're going to demand change. This is the moneyed interest in this moment, basically kicking people while they're down. Look, I understand when costs have to go up a little bit because you've got costs, but when you have these buying groups, and I'm picking on Alex Rodriguez right now because, well, that's the video I saw. The fact that he owns 38,000 doors, that 38,000 families are paying him between $900 and $1,200 a month. That his buying group came and sucked up all these houses, and they're almost heavily leveraged. They keep rolling over the debt, so it's basically on paper, just keep servicing that debt. The bankers love it because they get their interest. The buying group, they love it because they're getting $900 to $1,200 a month on something that would cost $400 for an average family. So they're pocketing 38. Think about it, 38,000 times $500 a month into your pocket. That's a huge amount of money, and you see it in every community. So and so buys houses. This is all backed and funded by these private equity groups. John just didn't decide I'm going to buy every house I can get my hands on. They're buying up every house that they can get their hands on because they know once they have the majority, once they have a sufficient number, they can make the price anything they want, just like the old company store, just like the old company towns. You go back and you learn about those company towns where you worked for the company, they gave you, a wage, and then they deducted, well, your health care, your tools. You had to buy stuff from the company store on script. The rent prices were set by and could be changed whenever. And when recession hit, when economic downtimes hit, the owner didn't suffer. The head of the company town, they didn't suffer. They passed that pain down to the renters, increasing their rent, increasing the cost of their food and their tools and their health care. And, I've said this a bunch of times over the last couple of years, that they are trying to recreate the idea of a company town. I hear people, no, Rick, you're wrong. Company towns are this. No, the idea of the company town that you work for the company. You got a credit card that you're in debt to, that you're paying interest to. You got a mortgage sometimes. Now it's rent. And they could throw you out of that anytime they want. This is why I've been saying for years we need stronger organizing in the labor movement. Not just to fight for better wages, hours, and conditions in the workplace. Definitely do that. But also policies that encourage investment in moderate income housing. My grandparents, when they got married, my grandfather came back from World War II. They got married for the same reason that a lot of people of that generation got married. They had to. And the first child came like 5 months afterwards, because the first one, the old wives' tale, could come at any time. They started off homeless, living in my grandfather's car. And in their lifetime led a very solid middle-class existence. But the home that they bought and they spent the vast majority of their life, they raised their children, eventually me, and they died in, was funded by government investment. The Levittown kind of ideas, where these planned communities came up of modestly sized homes. I think their house was 1,000, 1,100 square feet, brick bungalow, looked just like the one next to it, and the one next to it, and the one next to it, and the one next to it, a whole carbon copy of them, but affordable. The idea being that you have a solid place to live, and then you can go and participate in the economy. The idea back then is your rent, your mortgage, your housing expense, no more than 20% of your income. Now you hear these stories of people paying 70, 80, 90% of their income just, and I'm not exaggerating. There's something wrong with the fact that we don't have policy to come in now and say, you know what? We're going to have to start building these kind of homes. And we're going to have to make stipulations that, sorry, you can't sell to a private equity firm. Sorry, you can't sell to somebody who's going to have more than one. With the direct idea being, you know what? We want families in these homes. If you really believe in family values, and this is where Republicans should come along. If you really believed in family values, if you really believed in cared about the children, you'd get them homes. And that starts with a policy to build affordable housing. Not these $300,000 places. I'm talking 100, 125. Places that families can actually get a start with, especially young families now who have been, sadly saddled with a lifetime of student loan debt. I mean, there's just so much here. Just so much. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. If you're just now joining us, make sure you download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks for being here. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
This will happen no matter what we do about emissions.
NOAA warns U.S. sea levels to rise 1 foot by 2050, causing profound flooding.
Officials say the flooding began in the evening, over 10 inches of rain in just 3 hours.
Rio hit with deadly torrential rains, floods, and landslides. Plus, good news for breathers. Biden to restore California's clean car standards.
Hey, I'm a breather. That's good news. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It's happening. That comet is arriving in slow motion, and we've got to do something before it strikes.
Here's an idea, Michael Mann. Don't look up. This is your 13th anniversary Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, today, as it turns out, is the Green News Report's 13th anniversary. Happy anniversary to you.
And to you as well.
That said, unfortunately, we start off with some pretty grim, if predictable, news after 13 years.
Yes, unfortunately. Tragic news in Brazil. Rescue and recovery operations are underway in communities in the mountains above Rio de Janeiro that were hit by 10 inches of rain in just 3 hours on Tuesday. The deluge triggered catastrophic flash floods that caused 49 landslides. As we go to air, more than 90 are confirmed dead, hundreds still missing, and officials expect the death toll will rise.
And all of this, of course, completely predictable.
Yes. Speaking of predictions, here in the U.S., a new NOAA study confirms that U.S. coastal sea levels will rise on average by at least a foot by 2050, bringing higher, more intense storm surges and chronic high tide flooding.
A foot in the next 30 years?
Yes. NOAA scientists warn that America's coastlines will see sea levels rise rapidly over the next 30 years by as much as they did over the last 100 years. That is due to man-made climate change and land subsidence caused by removal of underground oil, gas, and water.
I say we just ignore all of these predictions. It's working out great so far.
Major coastal cities, especially along the Gulf and eastern seaboard, will be hit with costly floods even on sunny days, as much as 10 times more often. In a press conference, NOAA Administrator Dr. Richard Spinrad was blunt.
This will happen no matter what we do about emissions. This report is a wake-up call for the United States, but it's a wake-up call that comes with a silver lining. It provides us with information needed to act now to best position ourselves for the future. It's going to take all of us, government, businesses, academia, communities, citizens, to make a difference in the future.
It may be a wake-up call, but America is hitting the snooze button.
However, Penn State climate scientist Dr. Michael Mann on MSNBC explained that climate action can prevent even worse outcomes.
We're committed maybe to a foot of sea level rise here by the middle of the century, but we can prevent meters of sea level rise. So yeah, some bad stuff is locked in. We're going to need to adapt to that and reduce the suffering that results from that. But at the same time, we can prevent the worst by cutting carbon emissions rapidly.
There are a whole bunch of climate crisis deniers who bought really expensive property on the coast. I hope they don't regret their denial soon.
But some good news. The Biden White House this week unveiled a suite of policies aimed at overhauling and decarbonizing the U.S. industrial sector in order to reduce its climate-warming pollution.
Sweet.
The Buy Clean initiative will leverage the federal government's massive purchasing power to generate demand for cleaner steel, aluminum, cement, and other materials, all made in American factories. The Atlantic reports that the administration will act as an investor and consumer, including actually building factories in the U.S. to spur innovation. The federal government is the largest consumer in the world, spending more than $650 billion on products and services every year. Finally, some good news for breathers. The Biden administration is restoring California's special authority to set its own tougher standards, limiting carbon pollution from tailpipes, which had been revoked by the Trump administration. Plus, the Biden EPA will tighten federal pollution standards for heavy trucks and buses, the biggest polluters on the road, for the first time since 2001.
So the federal government is stealing all our good ideas out here in California. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. And hey, thanks to all of you who stopped by bradblog.com/donate to maybe help the Green News Report stay on your public airwaves for another 13 years. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank-approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, I've been enjoying the free fall, the terminal velocity free fall plummet of the J.D. Vance senatorial campaign in Ohio. He took some hits over the weekend when he said got to be honest with you. He doesn't really care what happens in Ukraine. Doesn't care about the fact that Putin could invade. Doesn't care at all. Now he does go in and say he does care about the fact that his community right now, the leading cause among 18 to 45-year-olds is Mexican fentanyl. I would argue fentanyl in general, but he claims it's coming all across the southern border, and that we're not doing anything about it, according to him. And I kind of disagree on that, but trying. Don't care about Ukraine at all. And he went to Yale, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on maybe why we should care a little bit. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for me.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So let's get into this a little bit, this idea that, and I've heard this from a number of my Republican friends, don't care. Don't care what Russia does. Don't care what happens in Ukraine. Could care less about them. Screw them. Let it go.
Well, I think part of it, Rick, is, first of all, nobody really knows a particular solution to the Ukraine. Number two, you have some right-wing members of the Republican Senate who, in fact, have said, stay out of the Ukraine, President Biden. Don't put any troops into NATO surroundings because we need that money to fight China. So you've got that contingency. So it's like a bag, you put dice in it and you roll it, and what number's going to come out. You don't know. So, second of all, Vance may have wrote a really neat book, but he doesn't know very much about politics. Again, and he's also trying to appeal to the common populist, although he's using the wrong appeal technique. But I don't care about any foreign country. I'm just, here I am. It's about us. But he doesn't tell you what he's going to do about us.
Right.
So it's everywhere. Everybody's trying to stake out position. But have you noticed something? Something for the most part, a lot of the candidates on the Republican side really, they don't want to get out too far on the diving board when it comes to the Ukraine.
No, not because you don't want to concede that, because that the message, and we've talked about this before. For me, the message then comes to those people who want to fight China. If you're going to concede here, what are we going to do elsewhere? What are we going to do when Putin wants to go even further? Poland, wherever, and then it sends the message to the Chinese: go ahead, take Taiwan. Go ahead, you're in control of the South China Sea now.
Right, and also we have an economic side to this. You and I have talked about it. I've always expressed that I liked the fact of Trump, the candidate, complaining about the Chinese government, went after the Chinese government as Trump the president. I loved it.
Yep.
I don't like trade deals. I want to see rights, for our workers. So I like that part of it. But when it comes to what we're talking about now, which military equipment, troops, etc., then we unlike the tariff fight with China, we don't have to have an exit plan on the tariff fight. We just keep going. If we're going to talk the real world of troops and that type of situation, don't we remember, Afghanistan and Iraq? We didn't have an exit plan.
Right. No, I don't think anyone's talking about sending troops into Ukraine. I don't think anyone's talking about fighting the fight for them.
How we come back,
I think that what we're talking about is ensuring that they get the things that they need, supplying them what they need, and also some sanctions against Russia so that there are consequences. Because this is kind of a historical big deal when a country, an aggressor like Russia, a bigger aggressor, goes in and forcefully takes over, unprovoked, a smaller country. That's kind of a big deal in our recent history, don't you think?
Well, I think it is. I mean, he had Russia and Putin in the Crimea. I believe that, and the articles have come out on this recently, China's looking at this as a fire drill for Taiwan. What will the world do? Not just us. What will the world do? So I think it's a big deal. And Putin's playing a chess game. He wants something at the end, and he wants to disrupt the Ukrainian government. I think he's done that. As long as they're divided, then the question of NATO doesn't come up. Oh, are we for sure going into NATO? But Ukraine will say, well, when will we go into NATO? Let's stall it off for five more years, 10 more years, which is what Putin wants to happen anyway.
Yeah. Or you end up having a situation where, you look at Belarus right now. They're saying, the Russians can keep their troops there. They basically took that country over without firing a shot.
Sure. And they're close, and they have allies in Belarus.
Now, what I saw in the argument with this Vance character, you had some military people chiming in that we already lost in Ukraine because of Obama. And what I found interesting is the argument that because of Crimea, this is a lost cause because Obama didn't do anything. But yet those are the same people who back then were saying Obama don't do anything. We're not with you, which in my mind kind of hypocritical.
Well, sure. Look, let's look at another case that is a perfect example. When it came to Syria, President Obama, he did a backtrack, but it was a smart backtrack. He gave a red line to Syria, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
Here's the red line. And all of a sudden the red line was being crossed, and President Obama did something that I think was smart. He turned around and said, okay, you crossed the red line, but I'm going to yield to how I'm supposed to do this. Congress, what do you advise? And Boehner was speaker at the time. And, they went nuts. It was like herding cats. There was 435 different opinions.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it was, with the Crimea, I don't think it's a matter that Obama set the stage at all. I think it's Putin's method of operation, and he would do what he is doing. I don't care who is the sitting president. He has a chessboard he plays, and he makes the moves.
Now we're talking about, they're talking about repealing the War Powers Act and all of that, which I think we both agree should happen. Isn't that exactly what what Obama was trying to make sure that Congress had a say in this before before something happened, and now they blame him for their inability to get anything pushed through.
Well, and again, he made the right move because he almost fell into the trap, I'll call it, of making that big decision. For example, what should we do? When he said, okay, I'm going to yield back to the War Powers Act. I'm going to yield back to, the existing situation. You tell me, Congress, give me some guidance. He didn't say tell me exactly what. He said give me some guidance, and they couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to be interesting to see how this plays out because, look, there are lives at stake. And I've said from the beginning, I am not in favor of sending American troops there, but we should be employing sanctions. Now the Hannitys of the world, I had Admiral Sestak on the program a couple years back, and he said we should be pumping all of the natural gas and become Europe's gas station. Is that something you see as something that has to happen in order to bring this into line, or do you see something else?
Well, I see two things on that. Number one, if we wanted to help Europe and do something about their energy situation, and we don't want them to deal with Russia, if those three things are our thoughts in this country officially by the majority of thinkers, then we have to, pay the price, which would be to, ship it. We've got to provide it because we are energy, we have energy abilities for decades. They don't. Now, if we don't want to do that, then I find it hard for us to tell Europe, we're not going to do that, but you better fight that, those pipelines and things, because, Europe's not going to do it. Macron's not going to do it. Germany's not going to do it. I mean, they'll give us some lip service, but at the end of the day, Rick, they've got to have energy. So now, going to the second way to answer your question, should we do that with Europe? I don't think so. If we do that with Europe, the manipulation by the oil companies, I don't like $6 a gallon gas.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Just call me maybe shy, but I don't like $6 a gallon gas, because that's what would happen.
Yeah, because when Admiral Sestak brought it up, I said I'm against that idea for the purpose of, I was told that the gas drilling here, especially in Pennsylvania, was supposed to be for Pennsylvania and for the U.S. to make us energy independent,
right?
So that we're not dependent on the rest of the world. And I exactly what you said. If by taking it and putting it other places, the price would go up. But here's what we've done in this state, and I'm not sure what they've done around other places around the country. We've built a bunch of pipelines quietly here in Pennsylvania to get from the Marcellus shale fields down to Philadelphia, where they've got the old oil refineries that they're changing into storage places that we could easily become that gas station.
That's interesting. As you know, we've got in Belmont County, Ohio, across from Wheeling, in my old district, main part of my old district. It is the gas town. We've got it coming and going. I don't know that we're storing it anywhere. It's a good question. I have to find out what we're doing, but I know we ship it.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens there. Today's the big launch of Truth Social. Did you get your Truth Social account?
Now what's? Oh, yeah. This is the. No, I didn't. I've got to get
Twitter.
one. I do want to follow. I do want to follow and see what's now. He can't be bumped off this, correct? This is his.
It's his. This is Trump Social, but they call it Truth Social. Devin Nunes is the chief cook and bottle washer there, and I've been saying this since the day he left Congress. I am waiting for the press release when he sues Trump because he's not getting paid. It's coming, because already the rollout has been less than stellar. It's kind of a joke, because I got it last week. It's where all of the really crazy of the crazy are. But we'll see. And for only $28.99, you can buy yourself a blue check.
Okay. Well, we'll see how it does. Of course, it would be mainly, pretty ardent, avid followers, I assume, that would go on it.
This is them. But here's the thing, and this is where I give them credit on a certain level. They understand you have to talk to your people. This is something Democrats have forgotten. You don't see any liberals, any Democrats going, "Hey, we're going to build an infrastructure so we can talk to our people." You don't see that at all. At least the right, they're going, "Hey, we feel aggrieved," like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, "I'm tired of being censored by big tech," as she's tweeting that out on a big tech platform. Just let that go.
Right. Well, your friend and my friend Ellen Ratner wrote the book. I think it was called 1, 2, 3 Talk.
Yep.
And Ellen was screaming 20 years ago or more, Democrats, get with talk radio. When it was Rush and the whole crew, she was yelling about that, a long time ago, like radio mediums, forums like yours. That is where it's at also.
No, I'm right there. That's why I started this. It's why almost 17 years ago we started this program to begin to add just a touch of balance in the places where we can. And it's been a quick time. I also wanted to get your thoughts on Rudy Giuliani. Evidently, he's got some more information tucked away somewhere, and I guess he's going to cooperate with the January 6th committee.
Right. Here's what I take out of this story. It was announced by Representative Kinzinger, Republican of Illinois, who's one of the two with Cheney, on the January 6th committee. And this was on Sunday talk shows, and that he expects Giuliani to, quote, cooperate with the House committee. Of course, they're investigating January the 6th. And what I'm taking from this is that Giuliani is in horrific trouble, somehow thinks that, okay, it's better to cooperate than not cooperate, and maybe he goes in and tries to tell, his end of it. I don't see this as a one of those deals where Rudy could pull a Steve Bannon and go, take me to court, put me behind bars. I don't think a lot of people at this point in time, especially Trump people, would care if he was behind bars, all right? So I think this is a move for Rudy Giuliani to basically try to avoid more trouble because he is in deep, deep trouble from multiple sources, including lawsuits of Dominican voting machines.
Yeah, no, he's
done.
Yeah, he's not America's mayor anymore.
No, not at all.
He may be America's guest from now on. He may find a room at the Gray Bar Hotel.
Now, I suspect, Rick, he may do the public appearance, and he may do a private wink and nod to Kissinger to pass on to the Democrats to have him, privately, behind a closed door, pass some information to attempt to save himself. That may happen.
So do you think this is the unraveling? Because I've said, and I'm going to stand by it, I don't think Trump goes to jail for any of this.
No.
I think he's got some real problems with the tax situation. I still don't think jail's coming out of that. Is something like this, him coming forward and saying, I'm going to spill the beans to save myself. I'll be the one who opens the door. Would this then be that thing that would move us in that direction, or do you still agree with me that it doesn't matter what they come up with? We're not throwing a former president in jail.
First, the inaugural committee, he's not going to have a problem on that. There's an inaugural committee. They're going to have a problem with themselves, the inaugural committee. Secondly, I agree he's not going to jail over the January 6th committee. He is going to have extreme heartburn, but not go to jail over the Trump investigation. It's always been his Achilles heel, more than the Mueller report, is the investigation of his company. Hits him in the pocketbook. That will make him squeal. But I think that Giuliani could provide information that's going to make him very uncomfortable. It won't lead to jail, but combine all of the four items I just mentioned, Rick, and it may be enough in a potential close election to lose him the independent vote.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything, you don't think anything in Georgia though. You don't think anything with the perfect phone call in Georgia gonna matter?
No, I don't think so.
Well, there you go. Lastly, this week is the big CPAC. Tulsi Gabbard's going to be speaking at CPAC. When I'm trying to remember when CPAC moved to Florida, because they used to be a DC kind of thing. Now they're, I guess, going to Orlando.
Well, every year I have went to CPAC that I can recall when I was working with Talk Media News and Ellen Ratner. I was in D.C. every single time. Yeah. Every single time. Obviously, they're going down there to make somebody happy. Wonder who lives in Florida. Okay?
All I want to know is the giant golden Trump Buddha gonna be pulled out.
Oh, I remember that. Ellen called it the bar scene from Star Wars. That's what she called it.
Yeah, I just want to know if they're pulling that out to take pictures again. That's all I want to know.
I know. I've been asked. I'm in Florida. I've been asked, oh, did you come down to CPAC? I'm down here for my cousin's 50th. So.
Well, congratulations to them. 50 is a giant monument.
Right.
Good on them. Something to
and
celebrate.
Believe me, if you knew my cousin, I promise you, CPAC is the last place she would put her foot in the door.
She might put her foot up. Well, never mind. We're not going there. But, Bob, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Rick.
Great stuff as always.
You too. Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst. No, seriously, you look at this, and CPAC used to be a place where they used to come and talk about conservative values and their policy aims, and that just wasn't sexy enough. They had to crazy it up, and over the Trump years, they have gone full-fledged off the deep end. You remember the Buddha thing? You remember the golden Trump? Wasn't very big, but you remember that? Or the year that he was making out with the flag, which was kind of creepy and weird and all that all at the same time. Yeah, all weird stuff. Very bizarre. Very bizarre. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I had to bring this story up real quick. There's a story down in Arkansas of 4 prison inmates who were, they got COVID, and the prison decided we're going to give them ivermectin. We're going to give them we're going to use them as guinea pigs for our fetish drug. In fact, these 4 were given a cocktail of crazy drugs without their knowledge, understand. Because, of course, the right wing is obsessed with it. The amounts, though, were just outrageous. The one prisoner, small guy, 158 pounds, was given 3.4 times the approved dosage. Another guy, just 190 pounds, he was given 6.3 times the dosage. Now, this isn't a joke. You know, I look at this and you go, isn't this, supposed to be overseen by a doctor? And look, when Joe Rogan did it, I was like, fine. He's got the best medical care you could get. You can make sure that you're not, he's going to be fine. He's not going to tear himself up. There's somebody overseeing it. He'll do fine. But these folks, nobody cared. Now, according to reports, they suffered basically all of the extreme side effects that you would get, the extreme nausea, the shooting out at the other end. And a lot of people are saying, hey, this is kind of like when, the U.S. government's done some bizarre things in the past, in Guatemala, for instance, where we infected soldiers, prisoners, prostitutes, mental health patients, all kinds of people with syphilis and other sexually transmitted diseases. So we could see how it, just how it worked out. Here in this country, when, the Tuskegee study, where they had black men who they found had syphilis, how they just didn't quite give them the medication or the treatments just so they could see how it spreads. There's that kind of view, and this is during Black History Month, kind of the wrong time for this story to break, but you wonder what happens in some of these prisons and what they get away with. It's infuriating. The reason I bring this up, it is Black History Month, and we have done a series of Black History Month podcasts. I hope folks will take a look at them. Back in 2015, we did a civil rights tour across the southern U.S. and spent a good bit of time talking about, the history of how African Americans were treated in this country. I went to some places where they did horrible, horrible things and now have museums and monuments. We talked to some of the folks who were there, and that podcast series, that is there to take on the go wherever you go, do all of that. Also, our podcast available every day so that you never miss a second of the program. Always right there on your smart device. Easy, just subscribe, share, like, all of that. I'm going to take a quick break right here. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in my state of Pennsylvania. As the state system of higher education, the people who own the colleges are pulling some more shenanigans. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1868. That was the day that the governor of California signed into law the 8-hour workday. The law was the result of a strong organizing effort led by California's trade unions. The call for the 8-hour day had gained traction across the U.S. labor movement after the Civil War. In the San Francisco area, the Carpenters Union helped lead the effort. Other trade unions soon joined the cause. They held a parade in June of 1867 that saw more than 2,000 laborers marching in the streets. The marchers were organized in order of when their union local had adopted the 8-hour platform. Ship joiners, bricklayers, lathers, and more joined the carpenters in a public demand for a standardized workday. The trade unionists also organized politically. They backed candidates to the state legislature that supported the 8-hour cause. Their efforts got results. An 8-hour bill was introduced. Sadly, it excluded agricultural workers, but the bill was passed and was signed into law. In San Francisco, the trade unionists celebrated their hard-fought accomplishment. Workers from Oakland sent representatives to join the parade. The law went into effect 60 days after it was passed. But like many of these early laws regulating wages, hours, and conditions, the law did not include the mechanism for enforcement, leaving an opening for employers to skirt the law. Soon after its passage, an economic depression further impacted enforcement, as hard times led many workers to take jobs that violated the law. Despite the legislative victory, the battle for the 8-hour day had not been won. The labor movement had to continue its fight for 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Many Americans can't believe that political coups are part of our country's history. But consider the Wall Street Pooch of 1933. Never heard of it? It was a corporate conspiracy to oust Franklin Roosevelt, who had just been elected president. With the Great Depression raging and millions of families financially devastated, FDR had launched several economic recovery programs to help people get back on their feet. To pay for this crucial effort, he had the audacity to raise taxes on the wealthy, and this enraged a group of Wall Street multimillionaires. Wailing that their, quote, liberty to grab as much wealth as possible was being shackled, they accused the president of mounting a class war. To pull off their coup, they plotted to enlist a private military force made up of destitute World War I veterans who were upset at not receiving promised federal bonus payments. One of the multimillionaire's lackeys reached out to a well-respected advocate for veterans, retired Marine General Smedley Darlington Butler. They wanted him to lead 500,000 veterans in a march on Washington to force FDR from the White House. But they chose the wrong general. Butler was a patriot and lifelong soldier for democracy who in his later years was critical of corporate war profiteering, and he was repulsed by the hubris and treachery of these Wall Street aristocrats. He reached out to a reporter, and together they gathered proof to take to Congress. A special congressional committee investigated and found Butler's story, quote, alarmingly true, leading to public hearings with Smedley Darlington Butler giving detailed testimony. This is Jim Hightower saying, by exposing the traitors, this courageous patriot nipped their coup d'etat in the bud. But their sense of entitlement reveals that we must beware of the concentrated wealth of the imperious rich, for it poses an ever-present danger to your and my majority rule.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the other day I retweeted an article from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which I thought, just reading the headlines, you go, this isn't a bad idea. Maybe we're going to undo some of the damage that's been done to Pennsylvania's state system of higher education schools. Because as I remember, and we're going to get some clarification on this, the idea, when I went to college, if you got 12 hours to 18 credits, it didn't matter. It was the same rate. So if you took 12 credits, it was the same price. If you took 18 or 20, it was the same thing. You were a full-time student. As I remember, the state system wanted to go, no, let's punish people who want to get done faster by charging them by the credit. under that guise of, well, you pay for what you get. Now it seems one of the schools is going backwards. Indiana University of Pennsylvania, in the headline, announced that it could be up to a 20% reduction in tuition for some students who just do what my generation did. So it seems like kind of we're celebrating something that, well, we're getting back. And here to share some thoughts on, well, what this is, what this means, and how it can affect students here in Pennsylvania, and something to look out for all across the country. I've asked our good friend Dr. Jamie Martin to come talk with us. She is the chief cook and bottle washer at APSCUF, the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, and also Dr. David Chambers. He's an associate professor and the chair of the Department of Political Science there at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, IUP. Guys, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
So let me start with you, Jamie, because you're the one we've had on, most often with the state system and all the insanity around destroying our wonderful state universities and colleges. Where are we in this moment with all of the stuff that we've talked about the reduction and the basically combining schools into who knows what yet? Any more clarification there?
Well, no, Rick. I mean, the plane is still flying as they're building it, so the consolidation is moving forward. We still have a lot of questions, as we always have, but it doesn't seem like this is going to slow down. And so those 6 universities will soon be two, in what they're thinking will be by July 1st.
So still July 1st. That's still on the agenda.
That's the target date for when they think the accreditation for middle states will be delivered, and the July 1st is the date they're targeting for when the new U's will exist.
To my view, still a horrible idea, and I think sadly could hurt everyone else. But today I did want to talk about this story at IUP. What's going on with this? Did I accurately kind of lay that out? What's going on?
Well,
go ahead, David.
I guess let me just jump in. I guess I'd just like to make sure that we're clear on our nomenclature, and that is we're returning to a flat rate tuition system at IUP for in-state undergraduate students. So, yeah, I know we're talking about a 20% reduction in tuition, but still, it's a return to what was prior to 2016.
Right. So, like when I went to school back in the 80s, you were a full-time student, anything over 12 credit hours, you were a full-time student. So anyone my age is going to know exactly what that means. Didn't matter if you took, 12, 15, 20, it was the same rate. When did they go to this per credit system to where if you did take 18, you were penalized? When did that happen?
That was in 2016, wasn't it, Jamie? Correct my poor memory.
No, it was the fall of the 2016-17 academic year, David. And I think both Dave and I are thrilled that our students are going to be paying less. So we're applauding the fact that they're returning. But David's right. And Rick, we've been doing some calculations. We have no idea how much more debt the students took on when the tuition increased by nearly 25% for a student that was enrolled for 15 credits a semester.
And debt for me has always been a big issue because as I look back on my own college experience, I made it through my undergraduate and my master's degree largely debt-free, working and getting some scholarship aid. It wasn't until I entered into my PhD program that I started acquiring significant debt. Now I'm seeing students who are completing their undergraduate program acquiring debt that in my world you didn't acquire until you were doing some higher education or some professional education. Right. So I'm deeply concerned about the level of debt that our students have entered into.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because, I hear a lot of people talking about, well, I took out student loans and I paid them off and, I didn't get any debt forgiveness. And because there's talk about the Biden administration possibly, and I think it's already been torpedoed, but there's been some talk about, forgiving some of the debt that's been taken on. I don't think people realize just the numbers that we're talking about. And I'm glad you brought that up. So when you're talking to your students and you think about yourself, it's different worlds, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I tell them I was 61 years old before I finally paid off my loans for my PhD. So that's the majority of my work life was spent paying off those loans, and my loans total less than the loans they're taking out for their undergraduate degrees. So I'm deeply concerned about the impact this is going to have on the rest of their lives.
And society as a whole. So, and I agree with you, Jamie. This is a good thing, and it should be celebrated. But I think remembering that this was done is something that is kind of infuriating. That because we had talked about this when this was about to go into effect. I remember it. That they were going to take on more debt. It was going to cost much more for working families, because our state system schools, are put into place to be affordable so that working class families can send their kids and get a better opportunity. That's the reason that we spend so much on it. And yet over the years, what's happened is we've made it much more unaffordable. So, they should be applauded, but also remember they did this on purpose.
Right. And, you can draw another line, Rick, and that is the enrollment decline. I was at IUP along with David when this began, and we actually implored them to not do this. We knew it was going to drive enrollments down because IUP was now 25% more expensive than our competitors in the western part of the state. The enrollments have dropped since 2016 by almost 29%.
Wow.
And if you remember, just a couple of years ago, the president at that university was talking about the steep enrollment declines, and now all of a sudden you have too many faculty. And 82 letters of retrenchment went out on that campus. So the faculty, they were seen as the problem, but we ignored the fact that those costs drove students out of our university.
So when I hear that, Jamie, and Dr. Chambers, David, you can throw in this as well. My mind goes to the worst place. I guess I'm jaded. I guess I've been doing this so long that I always end up at the worst possible option, which is, it sounds like this was almost done on purpose. The idea of privatizing, of destroying this jewel of Pennsylvania. It sounds like that to me. Am I wrong?
Well, I think there is a desire, and I'm not sure where to locate this desire, but there certainly is a desire to turn, in my view, state system schools into state-related schools. So just to put it into some kind of context, when I arrived at IUP in 1988, we were getting more than 50% of our funding from the Commonwealth. Now, that number is down to 27%. So yeah, there's a real problem here. The only way we have of making up that loss is by tuition, which is, one of the reasons where we are. But then poor decision making. I don't think we can ignore that reality, that in the moment decisions were made that were not terribly far-reaching, that weren't terribly visionary, that weren't terribly good for the funding picture of the system or of the individual schools. So.
Let me ask you this, David, because as I'm thinking about this, we have this whole mindset that everything has to be done for a profit. There's got to be, it's got to make money. As where I see certain things as it's part of the commons, it's part of the public good. It's things that we should be doing for society. And if we break even or maybe even have to subsidize a little bit to get the positive outcomes, we should be doing it. Education being one of those things. I look at that, what they're trying to, it appears they're trying to do with the state system is they're trying to, squeeze it down to, virtually nothing, to where it is unaffordable and it ends up just withering on the vine. That's where my mind keeps going. And I'm struggling with that.
It's tragic. I mean, Jamie and I were talking earlier, and I think the observation that in the last 2 years, IUP has lost 1/5 of its total faculty, and that's had significant impacts on our programmatic array. I mean, we're told that students come to IUP because of the programs we have to offer, but when 1/5 of your faculty leave, when 1/5 of your faculty leave under duress, obviously, that's going to have a decided impact on the kinds of programs you can offer to students, and we're seeing that. Our journalism department, which was very popular among students, is now gone. Our College of Humanities and Social Sciences is now gone. So I think we have to ask ourselves the question, to what end have we made these cuts? And to my mind, the end is devastating. Yeah. It's simply devastating to our program array, to the morale on campus, to students and the debt that they're carrying. I mean, I don't see an upside here when it comes to any of this.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Dr. Jamie Martin. She's the president of APSCUF, the Association of Pennsylvania State College University Faculties. Also, Dr. Chambers, he's the chief cook and bottle washer over there of what I'll get it. It's a tough name. The chair of the Department of Political Science there at IUP. So let me ask you, Jamie, in looking at what the university has done, what's the state system saying about this move? Is this something that the state system approved of? Is it something that they came up with? What is this?
Well, the Council of Trustees approved this, return to what they were doing before 2016 at a meeting on Friday. That will now go to the Board of Governors. I think it's on March 2nd, Rick. I'd have to check that date. But now everybody's applauding it, and we should applaud it. But the part that bothers me the most is it would be nice just one time if an administrator took accountability for a bad decision. Instead, they're doing victory laps and growing their arms so they can pat themselves on the back. And when we look at David just talked about how programs have disappeared, student debt was incurred, and it's a different world at IUP now for our students. And yet here we are taking a victory lap saying, aren't we so bright that we reduced the tuition?
So, Dr. Chambers, let me ask you, because Jamie said that enrollment had gone down significantly. Do you think this plan is going to help bring those students back? I mean, isn't the damage already done?
I think that's an excellent question. I mean, I've likened it to being on the tiger's back. I mean, once you're on the tiger's back, to jump off the tiger's back becomes dangerous. And we will, as a result of this decision, incur another $9 million shortfall. In the short term, there are some funds that we can bring to bear on that. But the reality is we're going to have to recruit a substantially larger number of students over the next 2 years in order to make up for the shortfall we incur by this decision. So I think everybody is understandably worried about that. I agree with Jamie. It's a great decision. It should have happened. In fact, in my mind, it should have happened. Well, it never should have happened, but to the extent it did happen, this decision should have been made years ago. But still in all, it is an uncertainty. We're going into this with not knowing whether or not we'll be able to meet that shortfall.
Now, we've been talking about education. We're talking about, working class kids having an opportunity at education and all of that. And me, I got to tell you, I blame our political system. I blame the Republicans in leadership who have pushed for this, and some Democrats as well, but not as many. I blame Tom Corbett for a big portion of this. The massive cuts that happened during his administration. This is the ripple effect of all that slash and burn policy. Do you see a way, and I guess for me, it's the political part of this is, do you see a way of coming back from that? Because we're seeing this kind of stuff happening across the country as we've been slashing education budgets, everywhere, but nowhere like Pennsylvania. What are we like, 48th in the country in higher ed spending? I mean, it's crazy. How are you going to educate our kids and get them to stay with the kind of system that we've got? Do you see a way forward?
I think if the General Assembly would actually pass the budget that Governor Wolf recently proposed, which was a 15% increase to the line item or to the budget line for PASHE, $200 million in scholarships, some additional funding along those lines, I think we can start to make some progress. But there has to be an appetite for that. And you and I have spoken. I see this as, a moral or ethical decision. Are we going to provide that common good? Are our students worth that or not? And so at that point, you just have to see if the General Assembly is going to uphold their end of the bargain of providing our faculty, like David, provide a high quality education to our students. The other end of that bargain was it's supposed to be affordable, and that's the General Assembly's obligation to this equation. So we'll see if they're going to be willing to do that.
Yeah. Let me ask you, David, because you're in the classroom, you see these students up front. When we went to school, it was, there was a fun side of life. There was, hey, we're gonna spend time here because this is where it's gonna go. This is the next step in our education process. A lot of the students that I talk to today, they're much more driven than I was at that age because I think they've been told, and rightly so, they're taking on massive debt. They've got all this skin in the game. They've got to get what they can get because this is their only shot at entering the middle class. Are you seeing that kind of mindset, that kind of change in the student body throughout your career?
I think students are very serious about what they're doing in the classroom. I've been impressed with what I've seen among my students. I'm also, I have to say, extraordinarily impressed by my colleagues. I always have been extraordinarily impressed by my colleagues. The kinds of things they're doing in the classroom are truly outstanding, a lot of innovative things. Students are responding to that. So, I mean, that's kind of the upside for me. It's the reason that I love this institution. It's the reason that I've stayed here for 34 years. And frankly, I'm deeply disturbed and depressed by some of the things I'm seeing, and I'm hopeful. I can't tell you how deeply I hope that we can recover from this.
Yeah. Let me ask you the last question in this. What can people do? You know, what is it you want me to do? What is you want people who are listening here? What should be done?
I think, the advocacy for the increased funding to the state system, that's going to be critical. If we're going to move the needle at all, we need to move from 47th in the nation up. It'd be nice to get up into the middle of the pack in terms of funding for our students. So many of the students are from either lower income, middle income families, first generation college students, students from underrepresented groups that are coming to our campuses. At IUP, we price them out of that option. But, if anybody can do anything in terms of getting in touch with their legislators, really talking about it, making sure that they provide the funding necessary for the universities, but also for our students. That's who I was in the classroom for 24 years, and David's been there 34. That's why we do what we do. But again, it's up to the General Assembly to do their part. So anything people could do to advocate for that funding would be, I think, what all of us can do.
Yeah, this is most certainly, in my view, a voting issue. David, you want to give us the final thought?
I'm a product of public education, public higher education. Both my parents worked in public education, public higher education. And I have to say, this is where my heart is. I mean, I think this is the greatest gift that we can offer to our children is an affordable education. And I want to see that happen. And I agree with Jamie, the General Assembly is the place where that needs to start. I'd like to see us move from 47th. I'd be happy if we could move from 47 to 27. That would be a whole hell of a lot better than where we are now. But yes, I agree with everything Jamie has said with regard to the obligation of the General Assembly here.
Guys, I appreciate your time. I hope folks will reach out and reach out to their legislature early, often, email, call, write, all of that stuff, letters to the editor. This is one of those things I think needs to be saved. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend, Dr. Jamie Martin, president of APSCUF, and also Dr. Chambers, associate professor and chair of the Department of Political Science there at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Love to hear your thoughts. Where are you? Pennsylvania, evidently we're going to strive to be middle of the pack in higher education, and that would be a huge step forward. Where's your state? Let me know. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1846. That was the day Sarah Bagley became the first female telegraph operator. She was hired at the office in Lowell, Massachusetts. Sarah spent weeks studying the electrical theory behind the new technology and began her job in earnest. She soon quit in protest after learning her pay was far less than her male counterparts. Bagley was no stranger to labor struggles. She was among the many Lowell textile workers who struck in 1842. Bagley was one of the founders of the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association. She fought for the 10-hour day and better working conditions in the mills. Sarah also helped to found the labor paper, The Voice of Industry. When the Reform Association demanded state investigations into working conditions at the mills, Bagley stated, quote, "Is anyone such a fool to suppose that out of 6,000 girls in Lowell, 60 would be there if they could help it? Whenever I raise the point that it is immoral to shut us up in a room 12 hours a day, I am told that we have come to the mills voluntarily, and we can leave when we will. Voluntarily," she said. "The whip which brings us to Lowell is necessity. We must have money. A father's debts are to be paid, an aged mother to be supported, a brother's ambition to be aided, and so the factories are supplied. Is this to act from free will? Is this freedom? To my mind, it's slavery." Bagley returned to Lowell's Hamilton Mills after quitting the telegraph office. She briefly continued her activism until she married and moved to Brooklyn, New York. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. So some really good news here in Pennsylvania. Look, going back to the state system of higher education, it's so screwed up. The Republicans here in this state have so badly screwed up the state system of higher education. There are 14 owned state universities here, and they're the jewel of Pennsylvania. They're a place for. So they were supposed to be for working class kids to go get a good education. My wife was one of them. She was able to graduate without student loan debt. Working, paying her tuition. The stat I didn't get into, back when my generation, I wish I lived in Pennsylvania back then. Back then, the state picked up 2/3 of the cost of the tuition. Student picked up a third. Today, the number is 3/4 of the cost of tuition picked up by the students, a quarter picked up by the state and local tax base. There is something seriously wrong. But I wanted to throw a shout out to Penn State. The students there at Penn State this year, their dance marathon, thon, as they call it here, raised a record $13,756,374.50 to fight pediatric cancer. Great on them. There were thousands of families, thousands of students that got involved in it. I know in my community they were out there with their boots and their buckets, collecting change on the street corners, doing all of that stuff. But they have every year a 46-hour, no sitting, no sleeping, no anything dance marathon where the students all come together, all of the Greek organizations, all of them to push and to help fight childhood cancer. They have raised just an incredible amount of money. I was looking at the number. It was something like $200 million over the time that they've been doing this, over all the years they've been doing this. Like $200 million to put into this. This year was a record-breaking year, and good on them for the work that they do and for that. It's absolutely incredible. So good on the students there at Penn State. Great stuff. Love to hear things that are happening in your neck of the woods. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, you can do what? That's right. You can download the podcast. The podcast is wherever you grab your podcast. We are there, from iHeart to iTunes, from Podbean to Stitcher, and everywhere in between. You can find The Rick Smith Show. Also, make sure this month, especially, it's Black History Month. Grab the Black History Month podcasts. We did those specifically for podcasts, not something you're going to hear on your terrestrial radio dial. So by all means, grab that. Thanks so much for being here. If you need to, follow us on social media. We'd love to have you. At Rick Smith Show on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, all of that stuff. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting weekend. What an interesting weekend it was. We now find out the the trucker freedom rally from Canada, the attempt to recreate it here with all kind of grievances, all kind of anger, mostly right-wing talking points funded by right-wing money. But hey, why not? The People's Convoy, as they are calling it, going to kick off, I guess, on the 22nd, somewhere in California. They're saying at the Adelanto Stadium. That is going to go all the way across the USA until it gets, well, to Washington, D.C., some 2,600 miles. And all along the way, they're going to be jamming up cities on the way. And good. You know what? I'm happy they're taking the southern route. You know, jam up those cities in New Mexico and in Texas and Oklahoma. Go that route and